Good day. This is Blaine Pardoe, and welcome to Writers Fix Problems. We're going to be talking with Edward Nile today about the book I just finished of his, Iron Strife. I'm going to do a quick review of this book. He hasn't heard the review, so it's going to be a little bit of a surprise to him. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some big stompy robot actions. This is book one of the Iron Shield Chronicles. And to me, it almost felt like a nostalgic trip back to the 1980s. This was reminiscent of Mike Stackpole's Battletech Warrior trilogy kickoff, where the fate of governments hang on the skills of warsuit pilots. And warsuits are the mechs of his universe. This is not about some far-flung galactic empire, though. This is a mix of steampunk, the American Civil War, the Great War, and a heavy dose of political intrigue and backstabbing, which I really, really enjoyed. Not a lot of authors could pull off this kind of a mix. And to be honest with you, Edward Nile does it with flair. I'm really looking forward to the next book in this series. This really filled a fix that I didn't even know I needed to have filled as a writer and as a reader of Big Stompy Robot action. And I really think you're going to enjoy it and enjoy our talk on it. So please join me in welcoming Edward Nile to the show.
Hi.
Hey, thanks for coming on. I really enjoyed the book. I hope you liked the review.
Oh, that was great.
That's going up on Amazon later because you can, one thing everybody forgets is we authors have to kind of grovel to get people to do reviews. It gets hard over time, and people are always like, yeah, I'll get around to it. Yeah. They never do.
I made the mistake of asking people to just like put up a file, put up some stars for the first little while when I was publishing, and I realized no, just write a couple words. Come on, guys.
Yeah, you could write good book. It really is that easy. But I really enjoyed this. It was funny because it filled a hole that I didn't realize I was looking for, which was just almost a level of swashbuckling kind of fun. There was almost a Robin Hood feel to parts of this book. And I'm talking the Errol Flynn Robin Hood, the Derry Do type stuff. And I was like, wow, I haven't seen a lot of that. You don't rely on any of the traditional tropes that are out there when it comes to kind of this military fiction or the stompy robot stuff. But before we jump into the book, let's talk a little bit about you. So, for folks who don't know anything about you, tell us all about who Edward Nile is.
There's not a lot. There's not a lot to say. I like fantasy and sci-fi. I grew up on it. I think some of my early inspirations were I read Robert Jordan when I was in high school. I read who else? I've read all the old sci-fi classics Arthur C. Clarke, etc. And really, when I was writing Iron Shield, I had just finished. What had I read? I had read a kind of flintlock fantasy called the Powder Mage series by Brian McClellan. And I'm like, oh man, I've always wanted to do kind of something like that. And I'd experimented with writing about mechs a little bit, right? So I'd done a short story where I had a really low-tech mech and in a kind of futuristic setting, and this is a rust bucket kind of thing. And I did this short story. I just watched Fury, right? And I love the aesthetic of everything to do with the kind of the tank crew and the tank battle. And I'm just like, I want to capture something like that, but with mechs. Because I grew up on Power Rangers. I grew up with Gundam, Escaflowne. I grew up with a bunch of anime stuff, and just this love of giant stompy robots. And I'm like, I want that, but I want to inject some kind of historical gravitas to it. I want it to feel like a real, like a real fantasy book, like a real, story with fully fleshed out characters and all that. I just saw this gap in where I didn't really see a lot of this kind of diesel punk stuff that I wanted to read. And so I had to write it myself essentially. And, so, this is kind of become a story of how the Iron Shield series starts. Because about me, I don't know, nothing else I'd really do for work or anything really pertains to my books, right? This has kind of just been my life's pursuit. So I don't really have a lot to the, I'm a 32-year-old metalhead. I go to, I go to concerts and I write fantasy books. That's pretty much it. But when it comes to the Iron Shield Chronicles, when I was first working on it, when I first got the idea, I was reading Shelby Foote's uh, Civil War narrative, and I was reading that, and I think by this point I had shown my one short story to my friend, and he'd shown me Scythe, which is what Iron Harvest, the video game, was based on. And I just like, and he's like, "This sounds like up your alley." I'm like, "Man, this is exactly what I kind of want to capture. I want to capture it with a fully fleshed out world and story with characters." And the first scene that popped in my head was the duel with Sam Mutton and Retribution in Edenville, where he basically has a spoiler, he has a field gun, like a field cannon, like rolled out, and like has this standoff with the 100-foot mech while he's just out unarmored. And I just had this kind of like, I wanted this old west feel. I wanted this kind of like story that kind of like had that harkened back to the American Civil War and all the stuff. I wanted to create my own world and my own setting with it. And so it's just a hodgepodge of historical references of things like, oh, that's cool. I'm going to grab that. I'm going to put into context with my world. And I'm going to, kind of like, add in all these elements. Like, I think Sam Mutton's kind of whole thing where he hides, he hides his identity essentially in order to be able to be a military leader and a politician, was pulled straight out of one of the, I believe, Southern senators or congressmen during the American Civil War, and where he's like showing up to these meetings with his saber at his side, and he's in his uniform. He's literally like accepted a lower rank so he can do both at the same time. So that's a tangent. I'm going on a tangent. Just
No,
stop me at any point. Yeah.
Well, it's amazing because there's definitely elements of the American Civil War in this.
Yeah.
You kind of flip things around a little bit, and it was cool because we all like rooting for someone that has lost, someone who loses and is trying to redeem themselves, and you really had that in this book. I'm going to ask you if you could to kind of summarize the plot of the novel without quite giving away all the key points, obviously, but let's whet some appetites out there for this, because this was really a fun read.
All right, guys, bear with me because it is like 8 a.m. over where I am usually not up this early. So we have, one, it's an alternate world setting, right? I created my own world of Arna where all this happens, and it's my historical influences are pretty much like I wear them on my sleeve, right? So I'm not going to deny that it's like very much inspired by American history in the case of Archenia. But the nation of Archenia has it's very young. It's only existed for about 30 years since they broke off from their colonial rulers, the Lighten Empire. And what's happened is they've gotten into another conflict with a nation called Zhang. And in the course of that, course of this war that they fight on behalf of another smaller nation that they've allied with, they basically get forced into a standstill by the Empire that tells them that basically all sides have to disarm and desist, or else the largest nation in the world, the largest empire in the world, is going to stop trade with both of them and basically screw them both over. So Archenia goes through a period of civil strife, of civil war, in which the northern industrialists choose to deny the Lighten commands, and the South upholds it. And basically, if the entire country doesn't disarm and disable its military power, which means its mechs, its war suits, then the deal's off. So it ends up being a civil war over whether or not the nation can continue to own and operate giant stompy robots. Now, the way around, the North, in this case, isn't trying to force the issue on anything except their own right to self-defense and self-determination. They secede and basically say, you guys can do what you want. You guys can try to uphold the deal however you want. We are not going to do this. We're not going to give up our weapons on the orders of the nation we literally fought a revolution to escape from. And the South has not unsympathetic a not unsympathetic stance when they say that, well, this is kind of the hole we've been pigeoned in. We want peace. This seems at the time to be the only way to get it. And that's the kicking off point. I don't know if I can really talk about much more without heavy spoilers.
Well, yeah, I got to tell you, it was fun. And for anybody who likes historic kind of woven into a new tapestry, this is really a wonderful set of narratives that get kind of played out here. Let's get into what I call nuts and bolts for this. And let's talk about the war suits, because the way you did it was very interesting. And again, this harkens to me back to my Battletech starts. These are passed down generationally from family member to family member. They have this wonderful reputation. Like when they're on the field, people kind of stop what they're doing to watch the fight, because they're so rare and they're so well known. So talk about how your mechs work. And because I'll tell you, first chapter is a battle, and it was pure. I got hooked right away because it was like, okay, this has got stompy robot action to it. It's got the politics too that I enjoy. So, but at the core of this is the war suits. So how do they operate? What kind of weapons do they carry? Stuff like that.
So there's different types of war suits that get introduced. The main type that you're talking about are the Kaiser, the ones that run on a Kaiser engine, which is it's this very unique, very one of a kind, innovative engine held, the secrets to which are held by like one family, right? One man and his son designed it and basically are the only ones that are privy to the knowledge of how to create them. And it's the only engine at this time in this setting that can power something so large and all the complicated mechanisms that go with it. It's diesel powered. It's operated by a pilot that sits in the cockpit located in the chest and operates a series of levers and pedals and looks out through periscopes that he can kind of he has a visor where he can switch through different sites. It's all very kind of like low tech. Like picture if a World War II tank was on legs and had arms, right? So they've got multiple different machine guns. They've got a pair of main cannons and typically a bayonet or two, with variances depending on the design. And that's essentially it. They are super kind of low, these kind of super low tech kind of. I didn't want my mechs to be like super overpowered. I wanted them to feel very grounded. I wanted a sense of fear, of apprehension, along with the power fantasy of being in a mech, where you're in something that you could, obviously it's a long-standing trope of and realistic kind of element of overheating and dying inside of a mech. Battletech's been doing that for had that baked in for ages. But not only that, but you have you can have smoke exhaust back up and start killing you off. If one thing goes wrong, you could quite easily die inside of these things. And they're not they don't have a lot of the fail safes that kind of a futuristic space age mech would have. It's literally this: you got levers and periscopes, and other than that, you're in a walking tin can. So I think that about covers the.
What's kind of cool though is you really, the way you did it, they're so unique. They're almost, it reminds me of when you watch Star Trek. I always tell people the character that never gets the play, but is an important character, is the ship. The Enterprise itself is a character, and you've managed to turn your war suits into characters. So, hats off to you. It was great stuff.
I forgot to mention that one of the coolest elements for me that I was quite proud of was that the way the Kaiser engines, because Kaiser engines are Kaiser warsuits are specific to their pilot, right? As you said, they're passed down generationally. They have this long-standing legacy, because something that big is going to be expensive. They're not going to be mass produced at this point. So what they have, and they're a bit different from the kind of lower tech, smaller war suits that get introduced later, because these were designed for one-on-one duels. Essentially, an entire fight has to stop for a duel to happen, and that duel can decide the entire fate of the battle. What is happening with these, though, is the way to turn them on, the way to activate them, is through a saber that is also the key, the ignition key, and the one of the throttles for the machine itself. And I don't know, like young me watching Power Rangers with all the Megazord designs kind of had a lot of fun. Young Ed came out a lot in those little bits, and kind of like adding those and kind of morphing them into something that was, more palatable for adult readers, I suppose.
Yeah, well, I really enjoyed it. Now, are these books self-published? I see it's Fat Bastard Press, and I tried looking up the website for Fat Bastard Press because I was like, oh, well, maybe
we're still working on a website. Fat Bastard Press is just the imprint that me and my and Joseph Morton, fellow author, that we just decided on. We were trying to spitball a name to kind of publish both our books under, and we settled on Fat Bastard Press. I wanted to go with like Mind Killer Press, some kind of Dune reference or something like that. And you thought, oh, that was going to be a bit too aggressive. I'm like, you know what? We're both kind of chonky. Let's go with Fat Bastard Press. Let's do that.
I like it.
Yeah, and before that, like my previously, I think I was going under Mech Wizard Press. It's all just me. It's all self-published. I'm a one-man army. I do all of I hire artists for the covers, but I did all of the font designs and stuff, all the graphic design beyond that, all the interior designing. I pretty much self-edited the entire fucking thing.
Yeah, if you could, Watcher, could you pull up that cover so they can kind of see that? Because it really captures it. I love that font. That is really cool. I didn't know you designed that.
Yeah. I designed the font for all of these, and as you can see, I kind of got it looking kind of uniform. They all fit together, so they'll have a nice shelf presence. And I designed the I don't know if you can really see it, but the gear sword kind of flag design that you'll see on my profile or on the back of these.
Wow.
Oh, when you zoom in that close, it gets all pixelated. That's what. It's because it's that's just a picture I uploaded to Twitter. But yeah, this is so Iron Revolt is going to be, for anyone out there that might have read book 3 Iron Exiles, which just came out last month. It's right here, right? So this deviates from the characters in the first 2 books. In the first arc, and goes into a kind of side story that the characters will come out with. And Iron Revolt's going to be the same thing. It's going to be these unique characters, unique to their own kind of story that will come in later. And then in Iron Fury, I believe, Iron Fury, the 5th book, that's when we're going to get back to the Arcania kind of conflict and the timeline going on with that. So
wow. So you're building quite a franchise here.
Hopefully, yeah. I have a concept I'm working on for like a kind of diesel punk detective story thing set 100 years into the future of the world, and I might start working on that once I have the first 6 books for the Iron True Chronicles out. I might take a little bit of a break to do that. It just depends on how sales are going and how I'm feeling at the time, right?
Oh yeah. Well, it's interesting too because Razor Fist kind of started this whole thing about we're in the new Iron Age of authors and stuff. Do you consider yourself one of those Iron Age authors that's out there kind of trailblazing all on your own?
I mean, one would. I guess I would hope. I'm definitely a one-man army when it comes to my books. I don't know. I've seen his interview on Iron Age Media. I've definitely followed a lot of this. I've been following Razor Fist for years, right? It's a metalhead who likes stomping mechs, right? He's up my alley. But I'm not like, I feel like a lot of his the Iron Age stuff is kind of centered around really a resurgence of the old school pulp, like the old school pulp novels, and I don't really think like my stuff would fit too well along with the.
Well, I think a lot of what they're saying is there's a lot of guys who are just going independent now.
Oh yeah.
Period. And not going to the traditional publishing houses, etc., that are out there. And really they're putting out some incredible
Oh
product,
yeah, absolutely.
yours included.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess I guess I would say, like, that I'd feel comfortable in that space, like, as being called part of that. It's definitely been an indie uprising lately. I mean, look at most. Anytime I go into a bookstore now, I can count off so many books I know were self published before the publisher came and grabbed them. Like, it's a ubiquitous thing now. It's almost like you have an equal chance of getting, if your book blows up, of getting picked up by a publisher, as you do trying to land an agent and actually like break into the industry these days. So it's kind of become like the Wild West in a lot of ways, of just like, just throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. And I would definitely I definitely welcome that. I think it's a great change from the gatekeepers of yesteryear.
Well,
But
I had an agent for years, still do, but I don't use him for anything because I don't go to the mainstream publishers anymore.
mhm,
But there over the years, what I learned was it was very frustrating because you get an agent, your agent reads the book and goes, "Here's what you need to change so that I can go sell it." And then you're like, "Okay, now I've got to make changes to what I think is going to happen." Then the agent goes and tries to sell it, and if they sell it, you get a publisher who goes, "Well, here's some things I want to change
mhm.
to make it more marketable or whatever," or they publish it, or in many cases they don't. And I had 3 books that I went through the whole rigmarole with my agent and the publishers, came back and they said they didn't want to do it, and I found smaller publishers to publish them, and the books did great. So the whole concept that an agent brings a lot to the table, all it really does is open doors for you.
Mhm.
And that's frustrating. And I think a lot of authors kind of get sucked into this, I got to have an agent thing. And I'm like, it's true if you want to go to Hatchet Books.
Yeah.
It's true if you want to go to a large mainstream publisher, but most of them you don't need them anymore.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I was just looking at the live chat going on, and I see that someone corrected me on my interpretation of the Iron Age. My bad. I will fully own up to that. Uh, yeah, it's when it comes to that. When I started self publishing, I did it specifically because I didn't want my books going in front of a sensitivity reader. I didn't want to deal with any kind of nitpicking as far as like my content. I didn't want to have to change anything to editorial review. I mean, like, it's fine if you're correcting typos, if you're correcting actual, flaws in the prose. But when you're trying to say, like, if you're trying to PC up my novels, you can go fuck yourself. I'm not doing it. So I basically that and cover design. When I started seeing mainstream sci-fi publishers like Galant's having cover images of spaceships on their books, and I looked at back, oh, Shutterstock. I actually saw a book that they actually proudly displayed that they took a stock image for, and this was Galant's. This was like a big sci-fi fantasy publisher, and that was kind of the waking up point. Like, I want control of my cover design. I want to hire my own artists. I want to package it the way I want it seen, because I know what Ed likes, and I'm trying to cater to what Ed likes, and so just I just made that decision, and I started self-publishing from that point. And I know the parts that in the Iron Shield Chronicles that an editor or an agent would want changed. They'd want everything kind of sanitized and take it out of completely the context of the kind of timeline it's set in. Take away anything that's even slightly might be offensive or I've had a couple of people, like, I had a guy, a reviewer, who put a really nice review, but there's kind of underlying assumptions some people have where they read the setting. It's like, oh, this is like, this, excoriation of colonialism, isn't it? They keep wanting to like ascribe this political motivation to my books that's not there. Right. Or they'll talk about like how there's a tribe in my in the Iron Shield Chronicles. There's a tribe that are basically a cargo cult that worships machines. That's literally what I took the inspiration from, is cargo cults. Like, what if there was a cargo cult that saw mechs and like worshipped them? And I got a few comments, both privately and like publicly, of people just saying that they didn't like how that was handled, and I wasn't like, didn't have everything like, I wasn't being culturally sensitive enough to the kind of groups that it was aesthetically based on. I'm like, really, like, at what point because I feel like I was pretty tame. I was pretty like even-handed with what I was doing in the context. But you can't do it. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you don't put enough people of a certain demographic in your book, uh, you're screwed. If you do, and don't put it in front of a sensitivity reader, or go by committee, you're screwed as well. You can't win. You can't. Yeah. Sorry.
It's crazy. I've seen it too much with publishers, and somebody sent one of my books my recent books for Land and Sea. They sent it over to a sensitivity reader, and they're like, "Here's all the stuff I would have had you pull," and I'm like, "This is why we didn't come to you. I don't need you to pull stuff." It's crazy. But how long do you work full time? I take it, and do you writing at night and weekends?
I have habitually made sure that I am working night jobs where I can get as much writing done on the clock as possible. Yeah.
Gentlemen, before we move on, I have to say you're both missing an opportunity here. See, what you do is you send it to a sensitivity reader for high scores, and then when it scores high enough, you know it's ready.
Yeah, I just couldn't. It was a weird way that I ended up at the sensitivity reader, and boy, did it took like zero time for me to get pissed off about it. Because it was like, seriously, I'm not representing enough backgrounds for you, and
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's how you can judge how well received your book will actually be, is how many reads per minute you can get out of a sensitivity. We'll call it RPM, actually.
I just look for a stroke factor. I want a sensitivity reader to literally have a heart attack or stroke while reading.
It doesn't take much anymore.
No.
It doesn't take much, and it's. I lost my train of thought.
Well, let me ask you.
Yeah,
let me ask you this: so you're working for, and I did this for years. I worked full time and did my writing, off hours. So, how much writing do you do a day, and in terms of how many hours or how much word count or however you measure it?
I generally it depends on how I go through heavy work periods, and then I go through times where I kind of have my cool down phase where I'm just editing, thinking about the next thing or something. I ideally I'd like to be working every day all the time. My brain just doesn't work like that, right? But when I'm actually in the middle of a project, when I'm deep into it, I'm generally doing about 3,000 words a day, 2 to 3,000 words a day. That's separated into chunks of like 20-minute typing sessions. And I actually time them, and I'll generally get 700 to 1,000 words done in that 20-minute block. Take a little break, do it again. And that's kind of how a lot of my stuff's been getting written. So yeah, that's
it's good to know, because a lot of people ask me, well, how much should I be writing? And I'm like, it all depends on your time. You got to have and most people don't realize what a discipline it is to do.
Yeah, you gotta develop a habit. You gotta perform all kinds of mental trickery to get yourself to turn off the internal editor and just type. I'll make my text white so I can't actually look back and edit as I do it, and I'll just type blind. So the text is matching with the background color, so that I'm just typing blind. I can't see what I'm typing, and I'll just type for 20 minutes, and then I'll go through and maybe clean it up a little bit after, and then I'll do my next sprint. So that's what I've been doing for a while. Before that, my Iron Strife, like the first 2 novels, I wrote entirely by hand in notebooks at my job. So then it was just transcribing them over to text.
Wow.
For that, yeah.
That's hard to do. Jeez. So what are you reading right now?
Well, I'm reading your book. I'm reading Splashdown at last.
Oh.
And
cool.
I can show it better than that. So finally getting around to this. I'm sorry. And let me look at where me and the wife are in the middle of the moving process, so I've got most of my books packed away. But I have been on my e-reader reading. I'm just gonna pull up like my most current reads. I've been reading the Dune prequels because I'm trying to read Dune in chronological order. So I started with the Butlerian Jihad from Dune. I'm reading a couple of nonfiction books, mainly The Guns of August by Barbara Tuchman.
Great book. Oh.
Yeah, absolutely great. But I can't believe it's taken me this long. I've read Max Hastings' Catastrophe. I read a bunch of other World War I history books, but that's like one of the classics, and I hadn't realized I hadn't read it yet. So I'm reading that, and I've usually got like a million different books on the go. Like I think I'm doing a reread of Count of Monte Cristo. I've got like I'm just I don't. I should be completionist and just like finish a book before I start with the next, but at this point I've got more than 5 different books on the go, and that's the consequence of reading in multiple genres, as well as just being kind of attention deficit, I guess.
Well, that's part of being a writer too, is you got to spend time reading. It's interesting you're reading Count of Monte Cristo, because at least this first book had a lot of swashbuckling in it. As I said, it's got that Robin Hood kind of feel to it. I didn't realize where you were tapping that from, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's an old favorite of mine from when I was a kid, right? So, and it's it's interesting. It's an interesting thing I sometimes think about, where I know a lot of people are, super completionists, where they're like, I can't read anything else until I've read this book. But that's not the way reading used to be. Count of Monte Cristo was released as serialized, like, little, bits. Like you'd get a serialized chapter every couple of weeks or month or something like that in a newspaper, a broadsheet, or whatever it was called back then, or a literary magazine. And the same thing with a lot of the novels, even up to the 60s, 70s, you had like stuff being serialized. Dune was initially serialized before it ever got released as a one massive volume. Same with a lot of stuff. And it's only nowadays that we actually have this idea of a book as this one massive tome, and you got to finish that. It used to be, it was almost like television, right? You'll watch a show, you'll go and watch an episode of something else. But it's kind of coincided with how people binge with TV shows now. Now they'll want to binge, a full book. I don't know. It's me postulating. It's just, I feel like, it's just one of the signs of how media and our consumption of it has changed.
Well, it's changed, but not really. I honestly think it's gone back to that. When you look at Substack, a lot of authors are doing exactly that. They're serializing their books. They're putting a chapter out at a time, unedited, even, to kind of go, look, this is where I'm at on the book. And it's a good way to connect with your fans.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, Watcher, you posted an interesting comment. Do you want to enlighten?
Sorry, I was distracted for a second looking at the comments myself.
I'm so sorry. Yeah. I wanted to toss that out there, and I didn't want to interrupt the flow of such a good conversation. Yeah. But interestingly, did you guys know that Frank Herbert couldn't find a publisher after years and years of trying to walk that around, and eventually got it published by going to a company that had up to that point only published safety manuals and stuff like documentation for like training new workers in a factory and that kind of stuff?
I did not know that. That is great.
Well, but the same thing happened with Tom Clancy. I met Tom Clancy before at a game convention. It was a blast. I got to play Harpoon with the guy, but Clancy got his stuff done by Naval Institute Press, which all they did was, naval nonfiction books, and they printed The Hunt for Red October.
I feel like a lot of this is like of its time, though. I feel like companies won't really do much of that. Everyone's so risk averse in the corporate world nowadays that, like, I can't picture a company branching out that far. I could be wrong. But again, like, it's kind of the print era has changed now, where it used to have a self-published guy would have, or someone branching out, if they were trying to distribute their stuff, they'd go. Michael J. Sullivan drove around with like a trunk full of books in the back of his car or something like that, and beat the pavement doing that. It used to be you'd have to actually get a distributor that would print the stuff. Now you have print on demand, so like people can just go and do that.
Well, my grandson's a major metalhead, so I'm going to ask you who your favorite bands.
Oh, I have so many. I'm a huge fan of most subgenres of metal. I love like cheeseball fantasy power metal, and I think Blind Guardian is probably up there as like one of my tops. So them and Iron Maiden, the classics. I'm seeing Wasp in a few months, so I'm really excited for that. And yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah. What does he have a favorite band?
Yeah, he's all over the place right now.
Yeah,
but he plays guitar. He's been doing it for 3 years, and
nice.
he does School of Rock, so he plays.
Nice. I remembered what I had lost my train of thought on earlier.
Oh,
And it
okay.
was about the whole kind of novels by committee thing of like, oh, you got to put in a certain amount of this, certain amount of that. I have read so many fantasy books now these days where you can feel when the author was forced to put in a female character point of view or or some kind of like, node to the current orthodoxy. You can feel it. Like there was this one series, I'm not going to name the series because I don't want to put the author on the spot, where it was like 3 male protagonists, throughout the book, but there was this one off character that throughout an entire trilogy does nothing. She is pointless to the story, but he keeps putting her point of view. I'm like, I can feel the editor in this. I can feel the editor with like an AK in the corner. Just, you better freaking put a woman into this. You better do it. And,
Well, my editor for BattleTech did that when I was doing Hour of the Wolf. He was like, well, we'd like you to change one of these characters to female. And I'm like, why? And he goes, well, the two previous chapters only had guys in it. And this chapter does too. So just make one of these people female. And I'm like, but why?
Mhm.
And it was, well, because it's a sausage fest. There's all these guys here. And I'm like, you do know in the real world, sometimes only guys are in the room.
Mhm.
Sometimes
Exactly.
only women are in the room. So tell me why, from a story perspective, do I need to change one of these characters to female? And he's like, well, it would read better. No, it doesn't read better. So tell me why, for the story to go through, this will make the story better. And it really
Imagine-
became a box checking exercise.
Look, I get that you can't be this person, but I have to pause for a moment and say, Ed, can you imagine the balls on a person trying to tell Blaine fucking Pardoe how to write BattleTech? Like,
It's amazing.
Jesus Christ.
But
Trust me,
it's-
this guy lacked a lot of testicles because he bowed down after that. Because I was like, I'm not doing it. If you can't tell me a story reason, I'm not doing it.
Well, here's the thing with fandoms, right? Everything's fine and dandy up until someone decides it's not. And someone will enter in and suddenly like, oh, I want to like the same thing you like. Oh, but I want to change this and I want to change that. And I want it to reflect my reality. It's like, why are you here then? Why, if it was so offensive to you, why are you in this space if you didn't like it? It's like, no one's going to go and try to get, a strong female freaking like, co-protagonist, strong female Rambo, right? You're not going to freaking like, no one goes into an action movie trying to change, it into some, freaking, labia fest. And it's like, it's only
We call that a clam jam around here.
Clam jam. Or like it's like you don't go into a Harlequin romance and try to like say like, oh, you gotta really have more male centered POVs in this, right? It's like you don't do it. It's just like, let something be what it is. Not every piece of media has to cater to everyone, right? It doesn't have to cater to everyone. You have to cater to your fans, the people who your target demographic, the people who like your stuff. You don't. It's this whole make everything palatable for the masses, for the broadest audience possible. Lose any kind of unique traits that'll really kind of connect with a specific fan group, and just try to make it broad and hope it's going to be the next Avengers or something.
Well, a lot of it is I personally write books I'd like to read.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I found a lot of good authors do that. And if you try to write for specific audiences, it almost always kind of falls flat because you end up in, I call it the trope fest. You go to the box of tropes for the characters because, well, every other military sci-fi book has these 3 tropes, and I'm going to pull one of those out and dust it off and put my spin to it, but it's still the same trope. And one of the things I liked about your book is it didn't fall into any of that. It was kind of like you threw the trope box away and said, look, I'm just going to tell some stories about some characters. And you almost created your own tropes kind of tied to these. And it was really kind of cool.
Yeah. I'm sure like tropes are this unavoidable thing. You can write a book intending to subvert every trope or avoid all of it, and you're going to stumble upon some tropes you didn't even know existed. But the very obvious ones I hate with a passion nowadays, and it's not because they're bad, it's just because I've read so many of them. And we were talking before we went live about how I don't like anytime I read a book where it's like the farm boy trope within it's always the same thing. oh, he's, just a normal farm boy. Oh, there's a festival at the village or something. Oh, he gets bullied. Oh, he runs into the wise, elder character who's going to like be his mentor later on. Oh, he discovers he has some magic power. And it's like, it's fine. I've read some books I love that had that, but it's like, we're in 2023 and there's still authors that are just hugging to these exact by the numbers trope where I can feel where it's going to exact to the percentile where this part of the book is going to come. And I get bored. I can't do it. I just can't do it, Blaine. So I try to I'm trying to entertain myself when I write. I'm trying to do something, unique and intrinsic to what I want to see in a book.
Well, and that's what's important is, because you have to assume there's other people out there who like what you like. And so you write for stuff you like. And you really have a passion with this because it really was a lot of fun to read. And it's not all mech battles. It's not, the mech battles are there, but they're there for a reason. And they serve a very strong plot point or a character development point. But it's more the background and the backdrop of this series is really a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it, and it was definitely it's definitely a fun wheelhouse. It's a fun sandbox that I've created. We were talking earlier about like how kind of how this is going to be like a larger franchise, and really I have limitless stories to set in this world. The point where like I don't have time for it all, and I'm just trying to focus on the main storyline now. But I've got so many things that once you get into, I think it's something unique to kind of a really good magic system or something that's unique to really good, combat system like mechs or something like that. Once you get into that, once you have build the world around it, the possibilities are endless, and especially when you start digging into real world history and you get so many stories that you read it, you just can't help but be like, what if this was a mech crew instead of a tank crew? What if the Civil War was fought over the ability to pilot giant mechs? What if it's just the questions start asking themselves, and you feel compelled to start writing the answers.
Well, Watcher, do we have any questions or comments that have come up on our feeds at all that we need to take a look at?
Let me take a look.
Let me pop through. I haven't noticed any. Mostly just people saying right on and agreeing with him. Let me pop through here. Morning from behind enemy lines. People agreeing that middlemen are soul killers. I'm with you there, guys. No, that's it. You guys go pick up his book, though. Also, go follow him on Twitter. He's got a brand spanking new baby Twitter account that needs followers. Prudence, prudence required that I eventually, succumb and make a Twitter account, even though I can't stand Twitter. I hate it with a burning passion. I hate most social media with a passion. This is, I think, the first time I've actually had my face on camera and been, in an interview kind of setting pertaining to my writing. Like I have like one audio portion of a chapter that I put out on my YouTube channel, and that's about it. So this is all this whole the whole social media space mystifies me. Because if you start promoting yourself too much, then it becomes tiresome. If you do it too little, people don't pay attention. If you don't do it the right way, I'm one of those guys. I don't really want to bring my personal life into my writing life, so I kind of it's just like, oh, I've got nothing book related to post about, so I guess I'm not posting this week.
Well, I found you on Facebook, so you're doing it right. When you posted that image, and people don't realize how important a cover is. I don't know who does your cover art, but hats off to them because it worked.
So I'm going to wait. I'll bring up the covers here. So for Iron Strife and for Iron Valor, the artwork was done by a Canadian artist named John Anthony Di Giovanni, and he did the painting, the mech. And so for I don't have it here, but he did the artwork for a couple of the other books that are coming up. As far as the Iron Revolt and Iron Exiles artist, that's this book here. This was I believe, what's that? He's not Russian, but what's like he's like, I think he's Russian, or I can't remember, like somewhere near Russia. It was one of those Eastern Bloc countries. Anyways, and his name is Shredder Dima, and he did this beautiful painting, which is probably one of my favorite pieces of artwork I've commissioned. And he's the guy for Iron Revolt, Iron Exiles, and I believe I have a piece of art by him for a future book coming up in like September or October. So
it worked because you posted up an image of Iron Strife, and I was like, okay, I'm buying the book. I didn't know you as an author. I didn't look you up. I didn't read any of the reviews. I just went and immediately purchased because I was like, I liked that image that you had there. It was compelling and it works. And a lot of people don't realize how important those covers are.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've bought books that turned out to be terrible just based on really nice cover designs. Like I'm a sucker for graphic design and stuff. Like I haven't read them yet, but I bought like a whole bunch of old Doc Savage novels just because of that imagery of the title font and everything and the paintings. I'm like, I just tap it to my veins. I want it. I don't care what's inside. I just want these books.
Brother, I'm a major Doc Savage guy.
Nice.
They're corny, they're stupid. They follow a templated pattern almost, but they're still really good stories.
So chat wants to know if you have a YouTube channel, Ed.
Yes. Let me just pull this up.
All right.
I've only got the one video, which is right now, which is just me doing an author reading of the first little bit of Iron Strife.
Ooh, very cool.
I'll put up in our. I'll link in the. I'll just link in the comments here. Oh, I can't. Okay, I'm gonna do it in the private chat, and then you can.
Yeah, I'll send
do your magic.
No problem.
All right. So, how can people get a hold of you? How do you want people to get a hold of you?
By buying my books and leaving a review. I'll get back to you. Don't worry. No, I have a Twitter account. I have a Facebook account. I have. If you buy my book and like go to the back, there's generally an email that you can reach me at. I've had some fans reach out that way. Leave a comment on a YouTube video. Follow me on my Amazon page. It's linked in the Twitter. Just all of the usual ways, all the usual suspects, I suppose. I do believe I have an email list linked in the back of my books. I haven't checked it in a while. I think I had like 3 whole subscribers that are waiting on their email update, but that could have changed in the interim.
Well, hopefully we can get some new fans for you here. I do want to thank you for coming on, Edward. This has been great. I always love talking big robot action, and this is a great series. It hits all of my buttons. It's historical, it's action, it's big stompy robots. So I mean,
all right. So are we winding down towards?
We're getting close to the end. So what can we plug for you?
So right now I have 3 books out. And I just full screened myself. Am I? Oh wait, that's
no. That was me. That was me. You're gonna hold up books, and I want
to
see
it. I have Iron Strife. That's book 1 of the Iron Shield Chronicles. You can pick up Iron Valor, which is book 2. Iron Exiles, book 3. All 3 of these are out. And look out for Iron Revolt, which, if all goes well, will be coming out this month. If it doesn't come out this month, if it comes out in June, then you're going to get a 2-fer in June because I have the next book already set to go. So you'll either see mid to late May release of Iron Revolt or 2 books coming out in June.
Love the imagery on that one.
Yeah, he did a pretty great job on that. So that's about it for my plugs.
Cool. Well, folks, make sure that you take a moment if you're enjoying this show to click the like button and obviously subscribe. I forgot to do that last week, but I remembered it this week. Next week we're going to have on Frank Gaffney, we're going to be talking to him about his book Indictment, It's the prosecution of the Chinese Communist Party and friends for crimes against America, China, and the world. Should be an interesting political discussion, different than this one, but it's going to be a real interesting one. And it's an intriguing book. I've been going through it. A lot of fun. So that's what we've got coming up next week. Edward, thank you very much. Keep cranking out the books, man.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me on. This has been great.
Watcher, anything you want to throw in?
No, I'm just excited to get reading this one. Honestly, I didn't get the chance to read it before we interviewed, but it's going in the stack. So
Cool.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone, and have a great week.